Hello friends, welcome to Online Web Tutor. I am Sanjay. In this video we'll see and discuss all about a very interesting and important topic of CodeIgniter 4, and that is how to create a multi-language website. So here we'll discuss all about the settings, configurations, application workflow so that whenever we get any CodeIgniter 4 application, then we can easily convert into a multi-language website. Back to editor. So before going into the deep concept of this conversion, first we need to discuss what is a multi-language website. So a multi-language websites are those websites in which the same content we can see into different languages. For example, from a blog, I am reading a content, let's say a blog article into English language, but some users reading the same content into, let's say, Hindi language, into Arabic language, into Chinese language. So a website which provides the same content into different languages is known as multi-language website. So in this video we'll discuss the same concept, that how to create a multi-language website by using CodeIgniter 4 application. So here I have opened a CodeIgniter 4 project. By the help of that we'll understand all about multi-language website. So before starting any coding section, if I go to slide here, we need to follow some steps. By the help of those steps, actually we can easily convert a website into multi-language website. So first we need to update or change application settings. Then we need to create a language controller file. So why we have to actually change application settings and creating language controller file, we'll understand once we write all these points. Third, we need to create language keys and language text. And fourth, this is the final point, we will use some helper functions of CodeIgniter. And functions like we will use session, lang. So these are the helper functions we'll make use of while doing our multi-language concept. Now let's discuss all these points into a detailed way. So first I will see all about how to update and change application settings. So back to editor, this is a CodeIgniter 4 setup. I will go inside this app, config, and from this config folder I will open app.php. This is a class file. So whenever we go and scroll down to this class file, we'll see a variable called default locale, and we can see here we have a default value called en. It represents that by default this setup, this website, this project is in English language. So whenever if we want to make into different language, we can specify the language code right here inside this default locale. Next we have the variable as negotiate locale. So by default the value is false, but whenever we work with the multi-language website, we need to make the true as a value, because in our website we'll have a drop down, and inside that drop down we will provide our language list. So whenever user clicks on any of the language, then according to that request we need to accept that value inside application, and we need to convert our content into that requested language. So this will be possible if the value of this negotiate locale equals to true. Now next we will have one more variable, that is supported locales. So right here as we can see, as we had discussed earlier, that by default it is an English language, so that's why we have this default value. So right now only when we have the supported locales, but in a second we'll add some more locales into this array. So from this app.php file we will work with this default locale, negotiate locale, and supported locales. So after this application settings, we need to create a language controller file. So as we had discussed earlier, that inside our website we'll have a language drop down. So whenever users select any of the language, then the request will come inside our controller file, and that controller file will be our language controller file. So inside that class we need to detect that what request we are getting and in which language users want to see our content. So according to that request, we need to change the value of this default locale and check that that locale actually exists inside our supported locales or not. If it exists, then we need to convert by using the concept of language keys and language text files. So to save our time or to convert a CodeIgniter for setup into a multi-language website, we have a detailed article inside this online webtutorblog.com. So I will go inside this website, this our website, I click on this search icon and type multi-language website. If I press enter, if I scroll down, so here we have an article that is how to create a multilingual website in CodeIgniter 4. So let's click on that article. Scroll down. So as we can see, we have multiple steps what we have to follow actually to make a CodeIgniter 4 application into a multi-language website. So don't worry about any point from these points list. We'll discuss about each and every point in a very detailed way. So here the first point, that is what is website language localization, and this is all about what is a multi-language website. Now if you go inside second point, that is all about CodeIgniter for installation. So already we have a setup. Go to next point. Next we have our env setup, what we have done already. So if I go here we have our .env file. Next we have enable development mode. So already inside our env file, if you go and check that CA_environment equals to development. In your case, if the value, let's say production, you want to change into development. And why we need that? In case while development of these steps, if you get any error, so instead of saying a 404 error page or something, a error page, we want an exact error message. So to debug our error messages, the environment value should be in development mode. Next we have our next point, that is locale configuration settings. So in this point we need to open app.php file. So as we know from app.php, we have the default local value equals to en, which refers to English language. So the first step is all about to convert negotiate locale equals to true. So back to editor, go inside app.php, and here we have the value as negotiate locale, so I will make it as a true value. Save this change. Back to article. Next we have the setting of supported locales. So as we know from previous that inside supported locales we have only the default value, and that is equals to en, which refers to English language. But here we are going to create a multi-language website, so I will pass two more language codes, that is ES and FR. EN refers to English as we know already, and ES refers to Spanish, and FR refers to French language. So it means we are going to create a website inside CodeIgniter 4 into 3 different languages. So what I will do, I will copy all these language codes of these supported locales. Go here, and instead of EN, I will pass two more language codes, that is ES and FR. Back to article. Now next here we have language controller settings. So we need to create a language controller file, and inside that controller file we will detect or read our user's request. And by the help of that request, we need to populate or change our blog post or any of the website content into that language code. But before creating language controller file, one more setting we have to do first, and that is inside base controller, which is a parent controller inside CodeIgniter 4, we need to add URL inside helpers array. So back to editor, go inside app folder, and then we have to go inside controllers folder, and we'll see base controller.php. Base controller is the file which is the parent controller of every controllers what we can create and store inside this controllers folder. Now we need to go inside this file and search for helpers, and inside this array we need to add URL. So why we have added, it's a helper. So once we add this URL, it means we are allowed to use site URL and base URL helper functions. Back to article. Now next, we are free to create our language controller file. So back to project terminal, PHP, Spark, make controller, and then we need to pass controller class name. So here, in this case, it will be language. Press enter. It has created a file called language.php inside controllers folder. Back to editor, go inside our app folder, then we need to go inside controllers, and here we have language.php. Back to article. So now we have our language controller. Next I will scroll down and I will copy the whole code of this language.php. Go here, just remove the existing code and paste it here. So here we have the language class extending from base controller. We have this index method. So inside this index method, the first line of code is all about creating a session object. Next we are reading all about the requested local value. As I told you, inside our website, we have some links, or let's say a drop down, and inside that drop down, we'll have our language list. So when users select any language from drop down or click on any of the link, so from that request, we'll read all about the local value. So after reading local value, we'll store inside this local variable. So after getting the user's request, user's local, then we have stored by using the session object using set method inside this lang key. But before storing that value inside this lang key, if we need to check that if already we have this lang key, then we are removing that. And after removal of that language, then we are storing the new local value. And finally, after storing all these values inside our session object into this lang variable, simply we are redirecting into the home page. So here we have this index method, and the only purpose of this index method is all about to detect the user's request. It means when users select from drop down, let's say in Chinese language, so Chinese is a requested local value. So that value will be stored inside this local variable. So before setting this value inside this lang key, we are checking if it exists, then we are removing that. And after storing into this lang key, then we are simply redirecting into our home page. So this is all about the function of language controller. Back to article. So this is all about the code explanation. Then we have our parent controller settings. So as we know, base controller.php, it means base controller is our parent controller of every controller class inside CodeIgniter 4. So inside base controller, inside init controller method, we need to add few lines of code. So what I will do, I will copy these lines of code only, means 3 lines of code. Back to editor, go inside base controller, just find init controller because this is a construct method of this base controller class. And here we need to add that 3 lines of code. Let's copy, go here and paste it here. So inside this init controller method, what actually we are doing in these 3 lines of code? Simply by the help of first line of code, we are creating our session object. And in the second line of code, also we are creating a language object, and these objects we are creating from the respective helper functions. Here we are creating session object from session helper function, language object from language helper function. And by using this language object, we are calling a method called setLocal. By the help of this setLocal method, actually we can update the value of default local. Already we know that default local, in this variable we have the value as en, which means by default language in English. But let's say that a user's requested into ES or FR. So after getting a user requested local value, we are updating this default local value by using this setLocal method. So these lines of code is only meaning that we are creating a session object, and why we are creating, because by the help of this session object we are reading this lang key. So once we get all about our user's requested value, then we are storing that value inside this lang key, and this lang key we are reading right here inside this by using the session object and changing by using setLocale method. Back to article. And finally, the last step we have called, we need to create our language keys and language text file. So to create that, as we know that inside our supported locales we have three locales called EN, which is for English, next we have ES for Spanish, and FR for French language. So according to these language codes, actually we need to go inside app, then we need to go inside our language folder, and we need to create three respective folders. So already we have a locale folder available, that is for EN. Next two folders we need to create for ES and FR. So go inside this language folder, new folder as ES, and the third folder is which is for FR. So let's go inside this EN folder, and first I will create text.php, and the same file I will create inside this ES folder, text.php. And finally we have the last one for FR, that is for French language, and it will be also text.php. And these files basically stores our key value pairs. It means our language codes, language keys, and the respective values. Back to article. So in the section of setup language keys and text, here we have our first text.php for EN locale. So I will copy the whole code, go here, and this is for EN text.php. I will paste it here. So in this file we are returning simply an array, and inside this array we have key value pairs. The first is page title, welcome message, and author information. Inside each of the key we have the respective values. Like inside page title key we have the value as welcome page. Back to blog article. Now next here we have text.php, which is for Spanish. I will copy, go here, next open text.php from ES locale, paste it here. Now in this file also we can see that we have key value pairs called page title, welcome message, and author information. But this time we can see this is an English language called welcome page, but the same message now converted into Spanish language. And this is all about welcome message. So we are storing the same value welcome page into Spanish language and stored inside this page title. Welcome message, it storing this value, and this value in English is equals to hi, welcome to this page. Back to article. And finally we have our third locale, that is FR, that is for French language, and text.php. So I will copy the whole code, go here, this is for FR locale. In this file we have the same keys called page title, welcome message, and author information. Back to article. So all we have done, now finally we need to create a controller and a view file where we will create our language options. So I will create a site controller. So back to project terminal, PHP Spark, let's say make controller, and I will create site, and let's pass a suffix, which means it will create site controller.php. Back to article. So here is the small code of site controller. So I will copy index method, or let's copy only this return line. Back to editor, go inside our app, controllers. I will add the single line of this returning a view file. Now next we need to create this welcome user. So I will copy. So let's close this text.php. So I'm closing all the rest files. Go inside app, views folder. I will create welcome_user.php. back to article, scroll down. So here we have the section of create user view file, and here we have the complete code. So I will copy back to editor, and inside this welcome user I have pasted all that code. So we can see that inside this view file here we have 3 links, and this is first one that is for English, next we have for Spanish, and the third one is all about for the French language. And whenever we click on any of the link, it will go inside this lang and en. So, and the final one we need to create our application route. So here I will copy these 2 lines of code, go inside our routes file. Routes file we can find inside this config folder, and here we have routes.php. I will paste it here, and the same line of code. Here we have some mistake here. Let's copy the complete line, pasting it here. So here we have the same route for landing page. So I will remove the first, that was for default one. So for landing page we are calling site controller, but in our case it is site controller. And from site controller we are calling index method, and this is all about lang, and after lang we are actually passing a local value. So after passing local value, it is calling language controller and index method. So let's go inside a welcome user. So when we click on this, let's say on French language, it will call lang, and after lang it is passing all about fr, which means a local value. After getting this local value, it is calling language controller. So let's open language controller file. So after getting the user's requested locale, that is in French language, we are getting the value inside this locale and is stored inside this lang key, and the same page redirected into our landing page. So after getting this value, it will go inside this base controller, and as we know, inside our base controller we are reading our session value, that is lang, and by the help of the setLocale method we are updating our default locale value. So once user will click on any of these links, any of this locale value, any of this language file, so automatically after getting this locale value we are updating our session value. Let's go inside our language controller. We are updating our values by using this session object, and by the help of base controller file we are reading that language code and updating our default locale value. So let's do a unit testing. So I will go and start PHP Spark Serve, press enter. It will start the application development server. Let's copy our project URL. So I will copy link, back to browser, open a new tab, and pasting all about localhost 8080 port. So here we can see inside our default landing page. Let's go inside our routes.php. So into default landing page it is calling site controller and index method, and from site controller index method we are simply rendering all about this welcome user page. And in this welcome user page, here we can see here we have used a helper function called lang, and lang function works on the basis of setLocale, it means default locale value. So as we know that by default for this setup we have the default locale equals to en, so automatically it will go inside our language folder and pick text.php from en folder. Why text.php? Because inside this lang helper function we have passed text, which is the file name, and this is all about our keys called page title, welcome message, and author information. So as per the default locale value, which is right now, which is en, so on the basis of en it goes into en folder and picked text.php, which is the first value we have, dot, and the key value. So here as we can see all the informations into en, it means en locale value, it means English language. But whenever we click on this Spanish, so automatically it will request go to routes.php, lang, and locale code from this welcome user Spanish lang es, which means locale code value, and it will call language controller, and from language controller it is calling index method, And in this index method, we are getting all about our Spanish code. For Spanish, our locale code, we are storing that value inside this lang key and redirecting our welcome page. So once we redirect our landing page, this base controller will pick the session value and change the default locale code. And once the default locale code will change from EN to ES, it means our welcome user page will pick text.php from ES folder. Back to browser. Let's go and reload this page one more time. Let's click on this Spanish. Now we can see that our information now updated, and these informations are coming from text.php, which is of ES folder. If I click on this French, then we can see we have our new informations into new language code, and this is coming from text.php, which is from our FR folder. So once we click on any of the language, let's say that right now these are in links, but whenever we create any drop down, so inside that drop down, when we select any value, we will call our route something called with the lang and locale code. After getting that locale code, we need to create a language controller file, and inside that controller file, simply we need to create a session object, read the user's requested locale value and store inside a lang key. It means any of the session variable. So after getting that session variable, simply we are reloading this page. After reload, this base controller will work, and base controller is simply picking all about our session variable and setting inside our default locale key. And after setting default locale key, this lang function is simply picking text.php from that respective folder. So on the basis of a user's click, we can see that our language is now updating. So this is the complete concept that how to work with a multi-language website. So in this case, I think that I explained each and every point of this article in a very detailed way to create a CodeIgniter for setup into a multi-language website. So finally, by the help of this video, I have given you the complete understanding, complete workflow to create a multi-language website by using CodeIgniter for setup. But in any case, if you get any error, any confusion, then please drop your comment for this video. So please like, comment and subscribe to this channel. So for this video session guys, thank you for watching and have a great day.